Jack Davis thought he was buying a farm for a fresh start. What he didn't expect were 3 towering women, each standing close to 7 feet tall, who claimed the land as their own. Alone and overwhelmed, Jack realizes his dream of independence may come at a price he never imagined. What do these women want? And why does it feel like the land and his future are already tied to them? Before we dive in, let us know where you're watching from. And if stories like this captivate you, don't forget to hit that subscribe button, because the next chapter will take you deeper into a world of mystery, power, and unexpected bonds. You won't want to miss what happens next. Jack Davis had dreamed of this moment for years. He could practically taste the air of freedom as he pulled his wagon up to the edge of the land. He had just bought a sprawling farm on the outskirts of nowhere. His boots hit the dusty ground, the smell of fresh earth mixing with the faint scent of sagebrush. It was everything he had worked for after a lifetime of struggles. This was his chance to start fresh, to build something for himself, far away from the noise of the city and the pressure of the world. The old farmhouse sat just ahead, weathered by years of abandonment. The windows were dark, the door hanging slightly ajar as if it had been waiting for him. It was perfect, quiet, isolated, and ready for a new owner who could put in the hard work. But something felt off. As Jack made his way toward the house, he noticed the movement figures standing in the distance. At first, they seemed like mere silhouettes against the bright sky, their forms tall and thin, barely visible in the midday Sunday. But as he drew closer, he realized they were women. Not just women giants. They stood in a line on the porch, blocking his view of the house, their silhouettes sharp against the sky. They were unnervingly tall, each one easily towering over 6 feet. The tallest, standing at least 7 feet, had dark braided hair that glinted in the sunlight like a crown. Her posture was commanding, her shoulders wide and muscular, and there was a sense of power in the way she stood. She wasn't just watching him, she was sizing him up. The other 2 women flanked her, equally imposing but with their own unique presence. One had bright, fiery red hair that seemed to match the intensity in her gaze, while the other's dark eyes and silent demeanor carried an air of quiet strength. Jack's heart skipped a beat. He had expected solitude. He had expected to be the only soul here. But these women, these giants, were standing in his way. He stopped in his tracks, the weight of the deed in his pocket suddenly feeling heavier than ever. His mind raced, trying to make sense of the situation. The land had been sold to him, he had the papers to prove it. The seller, a man named Thomas Reeve, had assured him everything was in order. No one else had any claim to the property. But these women, how did they know he was coming? The tallest of the 3, with arms that looked like they could crush a man's chest with a single squeeze, finally spoke. Her voice was deep, commanding, and carried a weight that made Jack's gut tighten. "You must be the new owner," she said, her smile wide but cold. The way she said it wasn't friendly, it was more of an observation, as though she already knew everything about him. Jack's voice caught in his throat as he fought to keep calm. "Yes, I am. This is my land now," he said, his voice steady despite the unease gnawing at him. He reached into his pocket and pulled out the deed, holding it up in front of him as though the paper could somehow protect him from their piercing gazes. The woman's smile only widened, her eyes flicking briefly to the deed before returning to his face with unsettling intensity. "Oh, we know exactly who you are, Jack Davis. We've been waiting for you." Jack felt his stomach drop. How did they know his name? And why had they been waiting for him? This wasn't how things were supposed to go. He had paid for this land. He had the paperwork, the legal documents. He wasn't some trespasser or squatter. "I'm afraid you're mistaken," Jack said, trying to regain his footing. "I've purchased this land legally. I have every right to be here." The woman took a step closer, her long strides effortless, and her presence loomed over him. There was no mistaking it, she was in charge. "We've lived here long before you. This land isn't yours yet, Jack. Not until we say it is." The words hit Jack like a punch in the gut. What the hell was going on here? Who were these women? And why did it feel like his purchase didn't matter to them? Jack's gaze flicked to the other 2 women, who stood silently, watching him with predatory eyes. The redhead's lips twitched into something like a grin, but it didn't reach her eyes. The 3rd woman, darker and broader than the others, stared at him with an unspoken challenge. Suddenly, Jack felt the weight of the land shift beneath him. The dream of independence, of a fresh start, began to slip away, replaced by an overwhelming sense of dread. He wasn't alone here. These women had staked their claim long before he'd even stepped foot on the property. "You're going to have to leave," the tall woman said simply, her tone no longer questioning. It was a statement, and there was no room for debate in her voice. But Jack wasn't sure he could just walk away. Something in the air, their presence, told him this wasn't a simple situation. This land, this place, was bound by something deeper than paper. Something that went beyond legal ownership. "You don't have a choice," she added, her voice low and almost playful. "You're ours now." Jack stood frozen, the deed still clutched in his hand, as the giant woman Abigail, she had introduced herself, stepped forward. Her boots made a soft thud on the porch as she approached, her every movement calculated and purposeful. Jack couldn't take his eyes off her. There was something unnerving about the way she carried herself, as though she were completely untouchable. She didn't just look like she belonged to this land, she looked like she owned it, in every possible way. The other two women flanked Abigail with the ease of long-practiced coordination, their gazes following her every move. Jack's eyes shifted briefly to them but quickly returned to Abigail. She was the leader. She was the one who spoke first, and her presence dominated the others. "I'm Abigail," she said, her voice deep and smooth, yet tinged with a hard edge. "And these are my sisters Martha and Clara." The names felt almost ceremonial in her mouth, like they carried weight far beyond just simple identification. She spoke as if she were introducing royalty. And somehow, it made Jack feel small. Martha, the fiery-haired woman, gave him a sharp, assessing glance. Clara, the broad-shouldered one, merely studied him with a quiet intensity that was almost unnerving. "We've been waiting for you," Abigail continued, her smile barely a flicker of warmth in the vastness of her gaze. "Not just for the deed, but for you specifically." "Jack," he swallowed, trying to maintain some semblance of control over his nerves. "I don't understand. I paid for this land. I have legal documents. This is mine now." His words were firm, but Abigail's cool expression didn't change. Instead, she took a step closer, her boots scraping against the wooden porch as the sound echoed in the quiet air. "We've been living here for a long time," she said, her eyes narrowing slightly. "This land is ours. It always has been." Jack's heart began to race as he shifted his weight uncomfortably. This was ridiculous. He had checked and double-checked everything before he bought the farm. There was no mistake. But the way Abigail spoke like she had absolute claim to the land made him doubt everything he thought he knew. "I don't care what you think," Jack said, though his voice came out weaker than he intended. "I'm not leaving. This is my land." Abigail tilted her head, a strange glint in her eye that almost looked like amusement. "We didn't say you had to leave, Jack," she replied, her voice lowering. "But you're going to have to learn that things don't work the same here. Not like they do in the towns you came from." Jack felt his chest tighten. This wasn't just about land. It wasn't even about property. There was something else here. Something bigger than he could grasp. "What are you saying?" Jack managed to ask, though he wasn't sure he wanted to hear the answer. Abigail stepped even closer, now towering over him. Her presence was overwhelming, her sheer height casting a shadow over him. He felt small and insignificant in her presence, as if the land beneath his feet didn't belong to him after all. "We're saying that you're part of this place now," Abigail said softly. "We've been here alone for so long, just the three of us. We've worked this land, bled for it, lived for it. And now we need you." Jack's mind reeled. What was she talking about? He couldn't bring himself to ask more. He was too afraid of what the answer might be. The wind shifted, and Jack could feel it. Feel the weight of their words hanging in the air like a storm ready to break. Everything around him seemed to grow still, the landscape vast and empty as he stood there, trapped between these three towering women and the life he thought he was going to build. "You're not here just for the land," Abigail continued, her gaze never leaving his. "You're here because the land needs you. And whether you like it or not, you're going to stay. You're going to be part of this family." A cold shiver ran down Jack's spine at the word family. He could feel the weight of it, the implications that went beyond mere land or ownership. There was something else at play here, something that didn't have anything to do with deeds or money. Something that involved a bond, a connection he wasn't ready for. Martha took a step forward, her fiery hair catching the sunday. "You'll learn in time, Jack," she said, her voice calm yet threatening. "We're not here to force you out, but we've been waiting for you, just as Abigail said. And now, you're ours." Jack swallowed hard, his throat dry as dust. The air felt thicker now, heavy with expectation. The reality of the situation was starting to sink in. Abigail's smile grew, but this time it wasn't cold, it was something more unsettling. Something that hinted at secrets Jack wasn't prepared to face. The silence stretched between them, and in the distance, The wind howled, carrying with it the scent of something ancient, something alive. Jack's heart pounded in his chest as he took a hesitant step back, trying to distance himself from the towering women who seemed to close in on him with every passing moment. The unease in his stomach wasn't just fear anymore. It was confusion, curiosity, and a strange, growing tension he couldn't quite place. Abigail stood before him like an immovable force, her piercing blue eyes never leaving his face. The air between them felt charged, heavy with unspoken rules he had no understanding of. As she spoke, her words were calm, almost soothing, but they carried the weight of an unbreakable truth. "You've come here expecting something different, Jack," Abigail said, her voice like the slow roll of thunder on the horizon. "But what you don't understand is that this land doesn't just belong to anyone. Not really." She glanced over her shoulder at Martha and Clara, who stood still as statues, their expressions unreadable. "It belongs to all of us, and when someone new steps into it, they become part of what's already here." Jack shook his head, still trying to grasp the enormity of what they were saying. "No, that's not how it works. I have the deed. It's legally mine." The words felt hollow, even to him, as if they were a desperate plea to remind himself that everything was in order. But Abigail didn't flinch. In fact, her expression softened slightly, like she understood his struggle, even though she had already decided what would happen next. "The deed doesn't change the fact that you're on our land now, Jack," she said, taking a slow step toward him. Her gaze softened for a moment, though it still held a quiet power. "But we're not here to take it from you. Not like that. No. We're here to offer you a place in it. To offer you something you've been missing." Jack felt a chill run through him at her words. There was something deeply unsettling in her tone, a promise, perhaps, but one that carried a burden he couldn't yet see. "Offer me what?" Jack asked, his voice barely above a whisper. He didn't want to hear the answer, but a part of him needed to know. He had come here for a new beginning, for solitude, but instead, he found himself trapped in a situation that felt more like a nightmare than a fresh start. Martha stepped forward, her bright red hair flowing behind her like a flame in the wind. "What Abigail means," she said, her voice like a soft purr, "is that we have our own ways of living here, our own ways of working this land, and we don't just share it with anyone. You're here because we've chosen you, Jack. We've been waiting for someone who could handle it." Clara, silent until now, shifted slightly, her broad shoulders moving with a quiet strength that seemed to shake the air around her. "The land isn't just about crops or cattle, Jack," she said, her voice deep and steady. "It's about connections, bonds, things that go beyond the surface." Jack felt his throat tighten. He couldn't speak, couldn't form the words to protest. The pieces were beginning to fall into place, but they didn't make sense. What were they talking about? Connections? Bonds? This wasn't just about property, it never had been. It was something else entirely. Abigail continued, her voice low and almost hypnotic. "We've been here for a long time. We've worked the land, shaped it into something that belongs to us, but we've also shared it. Together." She glanced toward her sisters, and there was something in her eyes, a silent understanding that sent a ripple of unease through Jack. "And now, Jack, we're offering you a place in that. Not as an outsider, but as part of something more. Something real." Jack blinked, his pulse quickening. He had expected hard work. He had expected to toil under the hot sun, to build something from the ground up. But this was different. This was an offer he couldn't quite understand. One that felt like it went deeper than land, deeper than any agreement. Martha stepped closer, her bright eyes glinting in the sunlight. "We don't ask much, Jack. Just your time, your energy, and, eventually, your trust. You'll work with us. You'll share this land with us, the way we've shared it with each other." Clara's deep voice added. "And when the time comes, you'll join us. Not just in work, but in everything. This land has a way of binding people together." Jack's mind raced. He tried to back away, but his feet felt glued to the earth beneath him. He was trapped by their words, trapped by their presence. This wasn't about the land anymore. It wasn't even about the deed. It was about something much more complicated. "We don't need your money, Jack," Abigail said, her voice soft but firm. "We need you. And if you're willing to stay, to truly become part of this place, then you'll understand." Eventually, the silence between them stretched long and taut, and Jack felt the weight of their gaze on him like a physical pressure. He didn't know what to say, didn't know how to respond to an offer he couldn't fully comprehend, but he couldn't just leave. Couldn't walk away from something that seemed so inevitable. As the wind picked up, carrying with it the scent of earth and something deeper, darker, Jack realized something else. This wasn't just about survival anymore. This was about a future he hadn't planned for. One that was being forced on him by forces beyond his control. Abigail stepped forward, her towering presence closing the gap between them. "You'll stay, Jack. You'll join us. And in time, you'll come to understand what we've built here, together." Jack stood still, his mouth dry, his mind racing. He had come for a fresh start, but instead, he found himself at the edge of something far more complicated than anything he had ever imagined. And somehow, he knew, there was no going back now. That night, as the farmhouse settled into an eerie quiet, Jack lay awake in the small, creaky bed that had once belonged to someone else. The wind howled through the cracks in the walls, the only sound that accompanied his racing thoughts. He kept replaying Abigail's words over and over, trying to make sense of them. He couldn't, none of it made sense. He had come here for a fresh start, not to be drawn into some strange, unspoken agreement with three women who seemed to think they owned him as much as the land. The floorboards creaked softly, and Jack's eyes snapped open. He wasn't alone. A figure stood silhouetted in the doorway, her shape barely visible against the dim light. Jack's heart skipped a beat, but he didn't move. Instead, he stared at the figure, trying to make sense of what he was seeing. It was Martha, her fiery red hair glowing like a halo in the moonlight. She was tall, even more imposing in the darkness of the room, her strong form casting long shadows against the walls. "I couldn't sleep," she whispered, her voice soft yet filled with an undercurrent of something deeper. "Couldn't stop thinking about you." Jack sat up, the bed creaking beneath him as he did. He had learned quickly that the women moved with a quiet, unsettling grace, as if they were always aware of their surroundings, always watching. Martha's presence was no different. She wasn't just here for a conversation. There was something else beneath her words. "Why are you here?" Jack asked, trying to keep his voice steady, though his heart hammered in his chest. He didn't want to feel vulnerable, but there was something about the way she stood there, her eyes glowing in the faint light, that made him feel exposed. Martha stepped into the room, closing the door behind her with a soft click. "I thought you might need some company," she said, her words deliberate, heavy with meaning. "We haven't really had a chance to talk. You're still figuring out the terms of all this." She gestured toward the land, though her eyes never left him. Jack swallowed hard. "I don't understand what you're offering. What you want. I didn't come here to get tangled up in whatever this is." Martha's smile was slow, almost predatory. "We didn't ask you to come here, Jack. You came because you needed something. Something none of the people you left behind could give you." She moved closer, her eyes never leaving his. "The land speaks to us. You feel it too, don't you?" Jack shook his head, trying to force the thoughts away. But Martha's words made something inside him stir. There was something in the air, something older than anything he had ever felt, something that made his skin prickle. He had always felt like an outsider, like a man who was never quite at home in his own life. But here, on this land, with these women, it felt different. I don't know what you mean," Jack murmured, his voice trailing off. Martha took another step forward, closing the distance between them. She was so close now that he could feel the heat radiating from her body, the weight of her presence pressing in on him like a force he couldn't escape. "You're not the first man to come here," she whispered, her voice low and intimate. "And you won't be the last. But the land is ours, Jack. It has been for a long time. And now, it's yours too. But you have to understand. There's a bond here. Something between us and the earth. Something that runs deeper than anything you've known." Jack opened his mouth to respond. But before he could, Martha reached out and touched his arm, her fingers brushing against his skin. The touch sent a shock of electricity through his body, and he froze. It wasn't just the physical touch, it was something more. The intensity of her gaze, the strength in her hands, the way she seemed to draw him in with nothing but a glance. "This land isn't just dirt and rocks, Jack," she continued, her voice growing quieter, almost hypnotic. "It's alive, and we're bound to it. We protect it, care for it, and when the time comes, it chooses you." She stepped closer, her lips just inches from his ear. "It chose you." Jack felt his breath catch in his throat. The room seemed to close in around him, the air thick with something he couldn't identify. He couldn't breathe. The world outside the farmhouse felt miles away, and all that mattered was the woman in front of him, Martha, with her towering frame and quiet, dangerous strength. "Why me?" he managed to say, his voice hoarse, unsure of what he even wanted the answer to be. "Why not someone else?" Martha's lips curled into a faint smile. "Because you came. You heard the call. The land always calls the right one, Jack. It always knows who to bring." Before he could say another word, Martha pulled away, her presence still lingering in the air like a heavy fog. She looked at him for a long moment, studying him with an intensity that sent a shiver down his spine. "You'll understand in time," she said softly. "Just trust us. Trust the land." And with that, she turned and left the room, the door closing quietly behind her. Jack was left alone in the darkness, his mind spinning. His body still thrummed with the intensity of Martha's presence, the weight of her words hanging over him like a cloud. What did she mean? What had she meant by that bond? The connection to the land? To them? The questions swirled in his mind. But one thing was certain. He wasn't alone here. The land had already claimed him, and the women, Abigail, Martha, Clara, they were as much a part of it as the earth itself. And Jack knew, deep down, that he wasn't leaving anytime soon. The following morning, Jack awoke with a start, the remnants of his strange dream clinging to him like cobwebs. He couldn't remember all the details, but he remembered the sensation being pulled towards something deep beneath the earth, something older than anything he had ever encountered. The image of Martha's eyes lingered in his mind, her words echoing through his thoughts. He got out of bed, feeling the weight of the room around him. The farmhouse was quieter now, the sounds of the wind and birds outside barely breaking through the silence. He had hoped that a night's sleep would clear his head, give him some clarity, but instead, he felt more unsettled than ever. The land had spoken to him, just as Martha had said. But what did that mean? What was it calling him toward? The house seemed to hum with a quiet energy as Jack stepped outside. The morning sun shone brightly, casting long shadows across the property. As he made his way toward the barn, he spotted the three women, Abigail, Martha, and Clara, already working. They moved with effortless grace, their strength apparent in the way they carried bales of hay and lifted heavy tools without hesitation. They were no strangers to hard labor, and Jack could feel the weight of their experience in every movement. Abigail noticed him first, her sharp blue eyes locking onto his as she paused in the middle of a task. "You've decided to stay then," she said, her voice calm and commanding, as if she had already known what his decision would be. There was no surprise in her tone, only an acknowledgement, as if she were merely confirming a fact. Jack hesitated before nodding. He had come here to escape, to find peace. But now, it seemed like the land had its own plans for him, and as much as he wanted to leave, part of him was starting to wonder if he could ever truly walk away from this place. "I didn't really have a choice," he muttered, though even as the words left his mouth, he realized that wasn't entirely true. He could have left, could have packed up and gone back to the town, but there was something here, something about these women, this land that was pulling him in. Abigail smiled faintly, her eyes never leaving his. "You never really do have a choice, Jack. Not when the land calls to you." Clara, who had been lifting a heavy crate nearby, looked up and caught Jack's gaze. She paused for a moment, as if weighing something in her mind. "You think we're strange, don't you?" she asked, her voice low and steady, her eyes unreadable. "You think we're different, out of place?" Jack opened his mouth to deny it but quickly shut it again. The truth was, he wasn't sure what to think anymore. He had come to this farm expecting hard work and solitude, but now he found himself surrounded by these towering women who seemed to have a connection to this land that was more than just physical. They belonged here, and he wasn't sure if he ever would. "We're not like other people," Martha said, stepping forward with that same unsettling grace. She was closer now than Jack had expected, her towering form looming over him. "Out there, in the world, people have their rules, they have their obligations. But here," she spread her arms wide, encompassing the land, the farm, the world around them. "Here, we make our own. We've always done it that way." Jack shifted uneasily, trying to make sense of the words. "What do you mean, make your own rules?" Martha's lips curled into a smile, but it was cold, almost calculating. "We don't answer to anyone, Jack. Not the law, not the government, not the expectations of the world. Out here, we live by the land, and we protect it. We work with it." Abigail's voice interrupted, sharp and clear. "And we protect each other. The weight of those words hit Jack with the force of a storm. These women weren't just living here, they were bound to this place in ways he couldn't yet understand. The land wasn't just a backdrop to their lives. It was a part of them, and they were a part of it. And somehow, Jack was now woven into that fabric, whether he liked it or not. Clara stepped closer, her broad shoulders making her look even more imposing in the bright sunlight. "The land doesn't just belong to us," she said, her voice deep and calm. "It belongs to all of us, to the people who've cared for it, worked it, and lived with it. And now, it belongs to you too, Jack." Jack's mind raced as he tried to process the enormity of what they were saying. He had always believed that owning land meant control, freedom, and independence. But here, it felt like the opposite. The land controlled them. It shaped their lives, dictated their actions, and bound them together in ways he couldn't yet comprehend. "I don't know if I can live like this," Jack said, his voice faltering as he tried to put his thoughts into words. "I came here for a fresh start. I thought I could be alone." Abigail's gaze softened, though there was still a steely determination in her eyes. "You can still have a fresh start, Jack. But not alone. Not here." The silence between them stretched on, and for the first time, Jack felt something shift inside him. The weight of the decision, the weight of staying, of truly belonging to this place pressed down on him. He didn't know if he was ready for what that meant, but as he looked at the women before him, he knew one thing for sure. There was no going back. "We'll teach you," Abigail said, her voice gentle but firm. "We'll show you how to live here, how to belong. But it's not just about work, Jack. It's about us together. The land, the bond, the connection." Jack swallowed, trying to steady his breath. The idea of being part of something, of being needed, of belonging was foreign to him. But there was a pull here, an undeniable force that was slowly weaving him into its fabric. The three women stood before him, their towering forms framed against the backdrop of the land they had claimed, and Jack realized that he had already made his choice. Whether he was ready for it or not, he was part of something much bigger than himself. And in that moment, as the wind picked up, carrying with it the scent of earth and something older, Jack knew that his life would never be the same. The days blended together for Jack, each one a mixture of long hours working the land and strange, fleeting moments with the women. The land was alive with energy more than he had ever experienced, and it seemed to draw him in, closer with every passing day. The mornings began with the women already hard at work, their strength and grace a silent reminder of the bond they shared with the earth. But there were times, late at night when the moon was high, that Jack's thoughts would wander back to his previous life, to the world he had left behind. He hadn't expected much of an explanation for what was happening here, but as the days wore on, a part of him grew desperate for answers. That night, after another grueling day in the fields, Jack found himself standing by the fire outside, watching the flames flicker and dance in the dark. The women had gone inside, leaving him alone with his thoughts, the weight of the land pressing down on him. Abigail approached first, her tall figure casting a long shadow as she moved closer to the fire. Her eyes met his, steady and unwavering. "Still thinking about leaving, Jack?" she asked, her voice low and contemplative. Jack turned to look at her, surprised by the directness of her question. "I don't know," he admitted, his voice heavy with uncertainty. "I've never done anything like this before. I came here to be alone, to build something on my own. But now it feels like I'm part of something much bigger than I expected." Abigail studied him for a long moment, her expression unreadable. "This land has a way of pulling you in, Jack. It has a way of making you realize that you're never really alone. And when it calls, you can't just ignore it." Jack swallowed hard, the familiar sense of unease settling over him again. "But you never answered my question. Why me? Why did you three choose me?" A silence stretched between them, the crackling of the fire the only sound. Then Abigail's voice broke the stillness, her tone softer than before. "There's a debt here, Jack. A debt we need to repay." Jack frowned, his brow furrowing in confusion. "A debt?" Abigail nodded, her eyes distant as though she were remembering something from long ago. "Yes. A promise that was made long before any of us arrived here. A promise that was broken. And now, it falls to us and to you to fulfill it." Jack felt his stomach tighten. "What kind of promise?" Abigail's eyes flicked toward the house, where the other two women were just visible in the window. "A promise made by our husbands. Men who worked this land with us, who swore to protect it, to make sure it thrived for future generations. But they failed. They made a deal with a man who had his own designs on this place. He left us with nothing but broken promises and a debt we can never pay on our own. Jack's heart pounded in his chest. What kind of deal? What kind of debt? Abigail turned back to him, her gaze heavy with the weight of years of pain and regret. It's not something we can explain easily. It's a debt that goes beyond money or land. It's a promise made to someone who wanted more than just our labor. He wanted something else. Something. She trailed off, the words caught in her throat. Jack's mind raced, trying to make sense of her cryptic words. You're saying this debt is something else? Abigail nodded. It's tied to the land, tied to us. It's a promise that binds us to something deeper than we can control. We've tried to break it, tried to walk away from it, but the land won't let us. And now, it's your turn. Jack stepped back, his mind reeling. My turn? What does that mean? How am I supposed to fix this? Abigail took a slow, deliberate step toward him, her imposing presence making Jack feel smaller than ever. The man who made the deal is dead, Jack, but his debt still lingers. The land needs someone to fulfill it. And now, it's you. You're the one who has been chosen to carry the weight of that promise. Jack's chest tightened, his throat dry. I didn't come here for any of this. I came for peace, to be alone. I didn't ask for any of this, any of you. Abigail's expression softened, but there was no mistaking the determination in her eyes. I know, Jack, but that's the way of it. You can't choose the land. You can't choose the bond it has with you. It calls to you, and you have no choice but to answer. The weight of her words pressed down on him like a physical force, and Jack staggered backward, his mind a blur of confusion and disbelief. How could this be happening? How could he, a simple man looking for a fresh start, be caught up in something so complicated? Abigail's voice was quiet now, almost tender. You don't have to do it alone. We're here to help you. We've carried this burden for so long, but it's too much for us to handle on our own. We need you, Jack. We need you to fulfill the promise our husbands made. Jack stood there, frozen, the weight of her words hanging in the air like a storm waiting to break. He didn't know what to say, didn't know what to think. Everything he had thought he understood about this place, the land, the women, the promise was being torn apart before his eyes. I don't know if I can do this, he said finally, his voice thick with doubt. Abigail stepped closer, her towering figure almost towering over him. You don't have a choice, Jack. The land has already chosen you. And now, you're a part of it. The finality of her words hung in the air, and Jack felt the truth of them sink into his bones. The land had chosen him. He couldn't walk away from it, no matter how much he wanted to, and somewhere deep inside, he knew he would never be the same again. The days blurred into one another as Jack found himself drawn deeper into the life the women led. There was no time to rest, no moment to reflect on his past or consider his future. The work on the land was demanding more than he had ever anticipated, and yet, there was a strange satisfaction in it. With each passing day, the lines between what he had come here for and what was now expected of him began to blur. The women moved with an ease that was both intimidating and impressive. They didn't just work. They owned their labor, their movements like a choreographed dance that seemed to merge with the very earth beneath them. Jack tried to keep up, but it wasn't easy. His body ached, muscles protesting against the workload. But the women worked as if the land belonged to them, as if they had been born to shape it into something extraordinary. And in some way, he began to understand that they had been born to shape it because they had been here longer than anyone, tied to the land in ways that defied explanation. But it was Abigail's voice, sharp and commanding, that cut through the rhythm of the day's work, pulling him from his thoughts. Jack, she called, her tone low but carrying the unmistakable authority of someone used to being obeyed. He looked up from where he had been kneeling in the field, wiping sweat from his brow. The sun was high, the heat unforgiving, but it was nothing compared to the intensity of her gaze. She stood by the barn, arms crossed, her towering figure like a sentinel against the backdrop of the golden landscape. Come here, she said. Jack stood, wiping his hands on his pants, and moved toward her, his heart hammering in his chest. Something about her presence always made him feel small, insignificant. And yet, there was something else, something magnetic in the way she stood there, something that tugged at him. As he approached, he noticed Martha and Clara standing off to the side, their expressions unreadable. They, too, watched him with that same unsettling intensity that had been a constant ever since he arrived. When he reached Abigail, she didn't speak immediately. Instead, she studied him for a long moment, her piercing blue eyes taking in every detail, as if measuring him. Jack shifted uneasily under her gaze, but he didn't dare look away. He had learned by now that in this place, avoiding their eyes meant weakness. Finally, Abigail spoke, her voice softer than usual but carrying an edge of something dangerous. "You're not here just to work the land, Jack," she said, her tone almost thoughtful. "You're here to prove something." Jack swallowed, confused. "Prove something? What do you mean?" Martha stepped forward, her fiery hair catching the sunlight, her expression dark. "You think you're here because you chose it. You think this is just about a piece of paper and a patch of land. But you're wrong. This isn't just about land, it's about proving you're worthy of it. Worthy of us." Jack's chest tightened at her words. "Worthy of you? I'm just here to work, to start over. I didn't ask for any of this." Abigail's lips curled into a smile, but it wasn't the friendly kind. It was cold, calculated. "We know you didn't come here for us, but we didn't choose you because we need you. We chose you because the land does. And now, you have to prove you can handle what's expected of you." Clara moved forward, her massive form casting a shadow over Jack as she approached. She looked down at him, her deep eyes unwavering. "This land doesn't take kindly to weakness, Jack. It's unforgiving. And so are we. If you want to be part of this, if you want to stay, you need to prove you belong." Jack's heart pounded. What were they talking about? What kind of test could he possibly be expected to pass? Abigail took a slow step forward, closing the distance between them. "You'll work with us, Jack. But you'll also test yourself. We need to see if you can keep up, if you're strong enough, if you're worthy of the bond we share with this place." Martha smirked, her eyes glinting with something dark. "It's not just about physical strength, either. It's about resilience, about how far you're willing to go." Jack opened his mouth to protest, but before he could say a word, Abigail held up her hand, silencing him. "We've been patient with you," Abigail said, her voice low and dangerous. "But this is your first test. We're not going to coddle you, Jack. We've all been through it. And now, it's your turn." The women stepped back, standing together, their forms towering over him like a wall. Jack's eyes darted between them. His throat went dry as the weight of their words sank in. This wasn't just about surviving here. This wasn't just about working the land or obeying them. It was about something much more primal, something he wasn't prepared for. "What do you want me to do?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Abigail's smile widened, and for a brief moment, Jack saw a glimmer of something that wasn't quite amusement, but something far more sinister. "You'll find out soon enough." Jack woke before the sun the next morning, the air still cool and damp from the previous night's rain. He had barely slept, his mind tangled in a mess of confusion, fear, and uncertainty. His first test, whatever it was, still hung in the air like a heavy fog. The women, Abigail, Martha, and Clara, had given him no more answers, no comfort, just cryptic warnings about what was expected. As he washed his face with cold water from the well, the weight of what lay ahead pressed down on him. He didn't know what they wanted from him, but he felt it, the pull, the expectation. They had already claimed this land, and now they were claiming him. But he had to prove himself, as though he were a part of something much larger than just a simple farm. He didn't have the chance to dwell on it long, though. By the time the sun had barely risen, Abigail was already standing in the doorway of the barn, her tall form silhouetted against the morning light. She didn't speak, didn't call for him. She simply waited, her presence a constant reminder of the weight he now carried. He didn't know what she wanted, but he knew he had no choice but to follow. The land was quiet around them, the smell of earth and dew hanging in the air as they made their way toward the farthest corner of the property, a place Jack hadn't yet explored. The towering trees loomed on either side, their branches thick with leaves, creating a canopy that blocked out the Sunday. The silence was oppressive, broken only by the sound of their footsteps on the damp ground. When they reached the clearing, Jack stopped. The place felt different. Not just the isolation, but the energy of the earth beneath his feet. He felt something here, something ancient, something that made the hair on the back of his neck stand on end. Abigail turned to face him, her eyes locked on his with that same, unrelenting gaze. She didn't speak right away, as if she were waiting for him to say something, to acknowledge the tension in the air. Finally, she broke the silence. "We've been waiting for you to see it," she said, her voice soft but firm. "To understand, this land isn't just ours, It's a part of us. And we've been waiting for someone who could accept that. Jack swallowed, his mouth dry. Accept what? Abigail took a slow step closer, her towering figure casting a long shadow over him. You've felt it, haven't you? The pull. The way the land seems to call to you, to draw you in. It's not just about what's here, it's about what's between us. Between you and the land. Jack's heart pounded in his chest, his thoughts spinning. He had felt it, the weight of the place, the way the land seemed to wrap itself around him, the connection that went deeper than he could explain. But it was also terrifying. He didn't know what they wanted from him, what kind of bond they were asking him to form. We don't need you to just work the land, Jack. Abigail continued, her voice steady. We need you to become a part of it, to share in the connection we've built, the bond we've cultivated. We need you to give yourself to this place, to us. Jack's mind raced, trying to make sense of her words. I don't understand. You're asking me to. What? Work the land like a partner? Like a husband? Abigail's lips curled into a faint smile, but there was no warmth in it. More than that, Jack. You're being asked to join us. Not just as a worker, not just as a man who can help us tend the earth, but as someone who can be a part of what we've built together. Jack's stomach twisted. A part of what? The air seemed to thicken as Abigail took another step closer, her eyes never leaving his. A partnership, a union. The three of us have built something here, a life, a bond with the land that goes beyond just survival. We've lived here, alone, for so long, and now, we're offering you a place in that. Jack took a step back, his mind reeling. The air felt suffocating, and yet he couldn't bring himself to run. Something was holding him here, something about the land, about these women, that made it impossible to walk away. This is insane, he muttered. I didn't come here for this. Abigail's expression softened, though there was still a firmness in her gaze. You didn't come here for us. I know. You came for peace, for solitude. But now you see. The land has its own plans for you. It called you here for a reason. And now, you're here to fulfill a promise we can't keep alone. Jack's heart beat faster. What promise? The promise our husbands made, Abigail said, her voice quieter now. A promise that brought us here to this land, to this place, to live and work and thrive. But there's more to it than just surviving. There's more to this than work and duty. It's about connection, about the land itself, and it's about what we can be together. Jack's mind spun. He couldn't escape it. The land, the bond they spoke of, the strange connection he felt to it, it was too much for him to comprehend. But there was something undeniable about the way Abigail spoke, the way the women were. They weren't just asking him to work the land, they were asking him to become part of it, to join them in something deeper, something primal. You've been tested, Jack, Abigail continued, her voice low, almost coaxing. Now, we're asking you to take the next step, to truly become part of this, to become part of us. Jack's mouth went dry, the weight of her words sinking into him. He had always believed he was in control of his own fate. But now, standing in the clearing, surrounded by the women who seemed to own the land, he realized that his choices were no longer his own. The land had chosen him. And now, the women were offering him a place in their world. The question hung in the air, unspoken yet unavoidable. Could he walk away? Or was he bound to this place, to these women, in ways he could never escape? Jack opened his mouth to speak, but no words came. He didn't know what to say. He didn't know if he could make the choice he knew he had to make. The weight of their offer, the weight of the land's pull, felt too heavy to bear. Abigail's eyes locked on his. The choice is yours, Jack. But know this, once you accept, there's no turning back. Jack stood in the clearing, the words Abigail had spoken hanging in the air like a heavy cloud. They were impossible to ignore, yet just as impossible to understand. He had come here looking for peace, a fresh start, a place to be alone and rebuild his life. But now, everything had changed. The land, the women, the strange pull he felt toward both, it was all a far cry from the simple life he had imagined. Abigail's gaze never wavered, and Jack could feel the weight of her eyes on him, pressing him toward a decision he wasn't sure he was ready to make. The air seemed to thicken around him, every breath a struggle as he weighed the choice before him. You have to decide now, Jack, Abigail said, her voice as firm as the earth beneath his feet. There's no more time to waste. The words hit him like a physical blow, the reality of the situation crashing down on him. There was no more running, no more hiding from the inevitable. He had been chosen, bound by something greater than a piece of paper or a simple land deal. The land had claimed him, And these women, these towering figures who seemed to hold the very essence of this place within them, were waiting for him to join them. Jack turned, looking back toward the farmhouse. It was a simple building, weathered by time, yet it felt like it belonged to another world now, one that was far behind him. This land was something more, something ancient, something that demanded something of him. He couldn't explain it, but he felt it deep in his bones. His mind raced, spinning through memories of his past, of the life he had left behind. The loneliness he had come here to escape still gnawed at him, but the offer before him wasn't just about escaping loneliness anymore. It was about something deeper, something he hadn't expected to find. The connection to these women, the bond they spoke of, it was more than just physical. It was real, something that could change him in ways he couldn't even begin to comprehend. "You want me to join you?" Jack said, his voice hoarse, though he wasn't sure if he was asking or telling her. "You want me to become part of this family, this connection to the land?" Abigail's expression softened, just for a moment. There was something almost wistful in her eyes, something vulnerable. "It's not just about family, Jack. It's about survival. It's about the land. And it's about the promise we made." Jack took a step back, his mind spinning with everything he had learned. There was no denying that the land had already shaped his fate. His presence here, his work, his connection with the women, it was all a part of something larger, something beyond his control. He felt it deep inside, pulling at him, like gravity, as if the land itself was calling him to stay. "But if I stay, if I accept," Jack said slowly, his voice gaining strength, "what does that mean for me? What does it mean for us?" Abigail didn't answer right away. Instead, she turned, her eyes scanning the vast expanse of land surrounding them. "It means you'll be part of something that goes beyond the work, beyond the farm. It means you'll be tied to us, to the land, and to the promise we made. It means you'll share in the burden, but also in what comes with it. The strength, the power, the connection to something deeper than you've ever known." Jack's heart thundered in his chest. The pull was undeniable. The land was his, whether he liked it or not. But the question remained, could he accept it? Could he accept this strange new life, these women, this land that seemed to own them all? He had fought for control his entire life. He had come here hoping to build something for himself, something that was entirely his. But now, he realized that whatever future he envisioned for himself, it would no longer be something built on his own. It would be something shared. And the choice to embrace that was his, and his alone. "I don't know if I can do this," Jack said, his voice quiet but filled with a deep, uncertain weight. "I don't know if I'm ready for this kind of bond." Abigail stepped closer, her imposing figure dwarfing him. She placed a hand on his shoulder, her grip firm but not unkind. "No one is ever truly ready for this kind of bond, Jack. But the land doesn't wait. It chooses when it chooses. And now, it's chosen you." Her words were final, and in that moment, Jack knew there was no turning back. He had come here seeking a life of solitude, but the land had other plans for him. The connection between him and these women, this place, it was stronger than anything he had ever felt, and he knew, deep down, that he would never be the same again. He took a deep breath, his chest tight, and looked Abigail in the eye. "I'll stay. I'll do it. But I need to know one thing." Abigail raised an eyebrow, her expression unreadable. "What is it?" Jack looked at the ground, gathering his courage before meeting her gaze again. "What happens now? What's expected of me?" Abigail smiled, but it wasn't the cold, calculating smile from before. This time it was warm, inviting, as if she had been waiting for him to finally understand. "Now," she said softly, "you become part of us. You work with us. You live with us. And you'll see everything will change. And for the first time, you'll know what it truly means to belong." Jack's heart raced, but there was a calm settling in his chest. The weight of his decision was heavy, but for the first time since he had arrived, he felt something like peace. The land had chosen him, and now he would belong to it. To them, there was no going back. The sun was setting over the farm, casting long shadows across the fields, the sky a brilliant wash of orange and purple. Jack stood at the edge of the clearing, looking out over the land, feeling the weight of everything settle into him. The decision had been made. He had agreed to stay, to accept the bond that the land and the women offered him. But as the final light of day slipped beneath the horizon, Jack couldn't help but wonder if he had truly understood the depth of what that choice meant. Behind him, the women were finishing their work, their powerful forms moving across the land with ease, as if they belonged to it as much as the soil and the trees. Abigail, Martha, and Clara, each one of them had a strength that was undeniable. Together, they were something formidable, a force that had shaped this land into something uniquely their own, and now, Jack was a part of it. He couldn't deny that he felt the pull. The land had chosen him, as Abigail had said. The connection was real, undeniable. It wasn't just about the work, about the sweat and labor of the farm. It was something deeper, something ancient that Jack had never encountered before. As the last light faded from the sky, he turned toward the farmhouse, his eyes landing on the women who were waiting for him. They stood together, as they always did, their presence a quiet but powerful reminder of the life they had built here, the life they had offered him a place in. Jack walked toward them, his footsteps slow, steady. Each step felt like he was walking deeper into something he couldn't fully understand yet, but something that called to him with every fiber of his being. When he reached them, Abigail was the first to speak, her voice low, carrying the weight of 1,000 unspoken words. "You made your choice, Jack. And now, you'll see what it means." He nodded, his heart pounding. "I'm ready," he said, though his voice didn't sound as sure as he would have liked. Still, there was a quiet resolve in him now, a sense of peace that had been missing when he first arrived. This was his path now. This was his life. Martha stepped forward, her fiery hair catching the last glimmers of sunlight. "You've chosen us," she said, her voice softer than usual, but there was still that unshakable strength in her tone. "And we've chosen you. But this isn't just about living here. It's about becoming part of something bigger, part of the land." Jack felt his chest tighten. "I know," he said quietly. "I can feel it." Clara, who had been silent until now, spoke next, her deep voice calm and reassuring. "You'll learn what it means, Jack. You'll learn what it means to live here, to work here, to be one with this land." He nodded again, taking in their words, the weight of the moment settling in. He wasn't sure what the future would bring, but he knew that whatever it was, it would be different than anything he had ever known. This land, these women, they were his family now. The bond that had been forged between them was real, undeniable. Abigail stepped closer, her eyes locking onto his with that steady, unflinching gaze. "You're one of us now," she said, her voice soft but firm. "And we take care of our own." Jack felt a strange warmth at her words, a feeling of belonging that he hadn't expected. It wasn't just about survival anymore. It was about something deeper, something he could feel in his bones. The land had called to him, and he had answered. As the evening light faded completely, the night settling in around them, the women led Jack toward the farmhouse, where a fire burned brightly in the hearth. The warmth from the flames filled the room as they entered, the air thick with the scent of wood and smoke. It felt like home. Not the home Jack had once imagined, not the solitary life he had hoped for, but something richer, something deeper. The land had claimed him, and in return, he had claimed it. The women, Abigail, Martha, and Clara, had opened the door to a new life, and Jack had stepped through it, leaving behind the man he had been. There was no going back now. As they sat together by the fire, the flames casting flickering shadows on the walls, Jack realized something else. He hadn't just joined them on the farm. He had joined something more, something ancient, something tied to the very earth beneath them. And for the first time since he arrived, Jack felt something he hadn't felt in years. Peace. The kind of peace that comes from knowing where you truly belong.